Welcome to our roundtable discussion today, talking about sustainable development, the future of food service through education. Now, sustainable development applies equally to the food service industry as it does to any other area of business. Some may argue it's about not wasting food, others may argue it's about changing the mindset of the people. But how do you persuade people employed in the industry to change? Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by two distinguished guests today from Worldchefs. I'm joined by Chef Ragnar Fridriksson, who is the Managing Director of Worldchefs, and also by Thomas Gugler, who is the President of the Worldchefs. And you'll see, because he's wearing a very distinguished pendant. What would you call that, a pendant? A sash?
You could call it pendant, you could call it sash. Okay. It's up to you.
Well, as the President, just give us a little brief rundown of what Worldchefs is.
Actually, Worldchef was founded in 1928 here in France. It was a kind of a cooperation between chefs who wanted to do something for the chef's world and for actually guests, and to upgrade services throughout the entire world. And finally, we end up by today with about 110 country members, which actually are numerous associations from all around the globe. And definitely one of the key elements is education, culinary education, taking care about competitions, which is actually something similar to Sirha, to Bocuse, on a different level, with the World Global Challenges for juniors, for seniors, and as well actually for community caterings and pastry. And yeah, definitely one of the most important things definitely is getting the chefs world united, getting them together with millions of chefs, and that's one of the key elements actually where we are working on.
So Ragnar, tell me, how is change happening? How are you helping promote this change to place sustainable development a little bit more at the heart of what chefs across the world are doing?
Yeah, we all know the predictions, the catastrophic predictions of the future of the planet and of the food service. And we decided from Worldchefs that, the chefs should have a role to play. We are really in the center of the food chain. As expert buyers, we can influence where we source, also as influencers towards consumers. So we started Feed the Planet initiatives back in 2012. Really, we started by let's teach ourselves, because that's a myth. We are not always the best in our kitchens to sustainably treat the food. So here we created a sustainability education program that we are now giving free to culinary schools all over the world. And we think this should be an integral part of all chef education. Now, it's not a dogma. It's more or less just to open people's mind, open the minds of the chefs, so they know what choices they have when they are choosing a purveyor, or when they are setting up their menu, looking at the local produce or the seasons, and also introducing, let's say, new species or undercatched fish that we are not using regularly in our industry, in our restaurants, but maybe dress that in a certain way that we are actually presenting something new to the customers.
So it's helping, if you like, teach them how to look at what's actually available, maybe, like you say, tapping into used resources, rather than going for the standard that everyone else is using.
Yeah, exactly. Ask the right questions to your purveyors and think new and think differently on how you can actually change people's perception. Absolutely.
Thomas, do you think it's already having an impact?
As we all know, the world population by 2050 will be more or less double than we have now. So we always think we don't have enough food on the planet to feed that amount of people, but that's not really true, because the amount of food would be simply and easily enough. But the problem is how we treat and respect actually our actual food, and how we are treating food as waste. Because on average per head you have about 80 kilo of food waste a year, which is edible food. Still, it can be revamped, it can be reused, and it could be fantastically be used for a different way in production of modernist food. I also would call it, cultures. But the difficulty is actually what we are seeing, that the fast-growing population is not really aware about what's going on. And we, as Worldchefs, said, okay, we want to we want to be a part of the educational side in getting this transformed and basically globally announced with our representatives, with our ambassadors, and with an organization which is globally very, very strong.
And you've done this initiative through the culinary schools, you say, initially. So how many are actually involved across the world?
So we are now working with 20 schools. It is sometimes a little bit of a slow taker because you do need to go through educational ministries and validation, but definitely it's growing very fast now. As we presented this two years ago now. Started with a pilot of 4 countries, and now, as I said, 20 countries are now developing the system. So,
and does this tie into the waste challenge that the World Chef organization is also doing?
Absolutely. So, so we're working on different ways to change the mentality of our chefs, and so sustainability is such a vast subject. So you need to start somewhere, and we decided that we were going to attack particularly the food waste. And because food waste is actually easy to communicate to our chefs, they have a direct impact on your bottom line. So less waste is better business. So that's the way to have their minds tick a little faster. And so we are now creating this hub, a platform, with a toolkit where we are collecting chefs together. We give them a toolkit, some tips and ideas, but we would like each and every one of them to go back to their restaurants and see what they can apply, what they can innovate, invent, and most importantly, that they need to follow on how they are achieving results.
They need to quantify it.
Quantify it by weighing. Yeah, so we ask them to 2 things. Weigh your waste. Let's weigh how much tonnage or kilos you are actually saving from before you started, from afterwards. And also let's quantify it in monetary terms of how money you saved. And so when we aggregate all that data together over the next 6 or 12 months, then we'll be able to really sort of give a new dimension of ideas of what people can take back into their kitchens, into their cultures, and also an aggregate data of how much tons and how much money one can save globally over a short period of time. So we hope to have a really interesting result that we're going to be working with the Sirha Green here in June 2020, that we can actually present some of those results and sort of share these ideas with everyone.
I guess it's basically quite easy because everyone who is in the industry can be part of that. Yeah, you don't have to have certain skills. It's very simple human being logic understanding how to rethink a proper, I would call it, usage of a raw material from A to Z. Because out of nearly everything you can use it entirely. But most of the problems which we are facing and which we are seeing, if you are not a restaurant owner, it's not your money. So people are quite careless, I would say, and they are not really thinking too deep about how much money they are really physically throwing when they take all the trimmings away. But nowadays it's really like that people starting to rethink how we can optimize and how we can be actually sustain certain products. And as Ragnar said before, very important is that most of the people around the world, they want to only eat primary cuts. If we talk about the beef or you talk about veal, they want to only eat the top pieces of an animal, which is quite simple, most probably to cook. But it's not the right way, because at the end you have a lot of, as Ragnar said, underestimated or underused products, which are fantastic if you apply the right cooking techniques.
Well, in certain parts of the world, they do this because they have to. It's out in the favelas in Brazil. They have to.
Of course.
They reuse banana skin to make banana bread. They use the tops of carrots to make a pesto.
And especially if you go back to your grandparents' time, out of an animal, everything has been used. Out of the bones, they made gelatin. Out of the skin, they made actually the leather. So everything has been used up from A to Z. And due to this, I would so call it a fast-growing upper-class thinking, a lot of this secondary work skills, which requires a lot of impact on work, on time, has been forgotten or simply vanished. But nowadays, I mean, we have to really rethink, because in order to make sure that the resources are enough for the future.
Essentially, the World Chef is a forum where the ways that people are reusing waste presumably feed back into other chefs maybe in more developed countries who throw away a lot more than might be thrown away elsewhere.
I mean, especially when you go into these unfortunate countries, which I would call it. I mean, they live a whole day from a hand of rice. And they would not waste one seed of rice because for them simply it's the way how to survive. In our industrial advanced regions, definitely we don't have to think like that, but we should think like this. And this is actually the dispute which we are having between the different levels of understanding of education and simply of living.
Have you had some feedback already, Ragnar, from chefs that are coming back into the forum and saying, look, we found this really good way of doing it within the developed world?
Yes, and we've been testing this around the world already. Setting up special meals where we are using, as Thomas mentioned earlier, using produce that you usually throw away, making bread out of a banana peel, using the bloodline of the salmon and instead of throwing it away. So it's been a lot of testing and innovation around this, and it's great when we at our Congress, we have a World Chef Congress every 2 years, where we have a symposium of people come together and we share these ideas. But it would be even more powerful to use online media to share even faster and more. So this is where we want to head in the future.
I've got an idea of a competition you could sponsor here at Sirha. World Chef competition for the best use of waste.
I mean, that's a fantastic idea because think about that. Go back 20 years and you would have said, make me out of the skin of a fish a chip. Everyone had said, are you crazy? This is rubbish, this is garbage, throw it away. Nowadays it's something trendy, it's stylish, it tastes quite good at the end, yeah? And this is the key of it. I mean, be innovative. And these innovations at the end brought us somewhere where we are now, that we have certain food items on the plate, which 10, 15 years ago we would never even have thought about to do that. So you see, in one direction we are very, very, I would so call it, innovative. And on the other hand, we are stagnant because we are not opening our eyes and we don't want to see what's really going on.
A bit conservative, perhaps.
Absolutely.
No, we're talking about a generational change, and that you say 15 years ago, things are changing. But you're also targeting younger consumers, younger chefs of the future. Yeah,
and that's really what we want to also to do is to change behaviors in that future populations. And as I said, we need to teach ourselves first. But we also have some great programs. So we are actually we're sending the chefs into primary schools of young children between 8 and 12-year-old with a sort of a play toolkit. We are doing now in spring, we're doing Food Heroes. It's a part of United Nations project called the World Biggest Lesson. So we are doing this in many countries, and we've been doing this in the past as well in 60 countries. We're reaching 50,000 children every time from all over the world, and this is something that all chefs can be a part of. I mean, many of us have children, or we know somebody who has a child. There's a nearby school, every restaurant, I would suppose. So we sort of set up the whole structure of step-by-step, download the toolkit, go to your local school, make an interview, and then just go and have fun with the kids. And we're talking about sustainability, finish your meal, try new ingredients. Let's do some cooking together using spinach with some avocado vinaigrette and things that the kids might be not used to eating at home. So we're giving them a new experience and open up their minds. So they will be the future advocates for healthier, sustainable food. And they will do it as immediately when they get home to mommy and daddy and say, Mommy, this is what I got at school today. Why can't I do this?
Yeah.
I mean, it comes from a quite interesting part of the world. I mean, Ragnar comes from Iceland. And many, many years ago, there has been a project in Iceland about fresh vegetables and fruits. And there has been created a hero. His name was Magnus. I don't know if you remember that. But with this activity, which was supported by the government, the fruits, fresh fruits and vegetable consumption within 3 months went up by some 100% more because they made this campaign throughout the schools, through kindergartens through supermarkets and to high-end consumer shops. And this was such an intensive, I so would call it campaign, which was cheered actually by that time Michelle Obama. She was one of the key leaders of the whole program. It was such a big success that the entire government saw what impact the chef's world or a good campaign in regards to healthy food can make out of an entire country. And Iceland is a small country as an example, but imagine you duplicate that for mega countries which not have 100, 200,000 or 2 million people. We have 1 billion people. That's a really, really big impact. And at the end, if our families and especially the kids are aware about how healthy food can be in order to avoid a lot of doctors and things like that, which is in several countries around the globe. I mean, especially these wrong eating habits causing huge problems with diabetic and whatever. And I mean, I live in Saudi Arabia. I see how many difficulties we have due to improper eating habits, but it's a cultural thing. And we as chefs, I mean, all around the world have a very, very great opportunity actually in playing on people's mind, in showing them and guiding them and recommending them a different trend.
So it's not, it's not necessarily about changing their culture. It's just adapting the way of teaching young people about good eating and also about not wasting things and looking at the long term, because ultimately they're going to be here longer than we are. I mean,
I remember your childhood ages. If you would have told to your father about food which you are eating nowadays, he would have said, no way, because that was not a trend. But due to these fast travel experiences that people are really seeing the world, they get to know about food. And now everywhere, all around the world, at any day, any time, you have food available, which is even not in season, and it travels the entire world. So we really have to think about making sure that people are getting the right food, which is in season and whatever, in order to have qualities.
So do you feel, I mean, this is obviously a very important subject close to your heart as the World Chef Organization. Is that what you should be doing? I mean, maybe some chef societies think, no, you should be representing us on the stage of haute gastronomie, you should be promoting our interests, not teaching us or trying to tell us to change our ways.
No, I do believe it's really a part of being a chef like Thomas, and we all know it's all about transmitting knowledge to next generation, and it's all about sharing. And chefs are genuinely generous people. And they love that sharing and getting people together and transmitting the know-how. So really, chefs are passionate about that. They're actually quite easy to mobilize to do certain activities, of social activities. Also because, I mean, they often come from a humble background. It's not in all parts of the world, it's not a high-paid position. You work your way upwards. And so it's very, very deep in their heart is to give back to societies. And I think definitely we have a role to play. And we see that every time we have a catastrophe around the world, we have our boys, the World Chefs Without Borders. They would leave their jobs and go and serving food to victims of whether it's a flooding in Indonesia or the earthquakes in Italy, etc. Our chefs are there, and they are giving their time and
Final comment.
But you had a parade example here, as you said, in leading people or in influencing people. When it was the young times of late master Paul Bocuse, he set a trend. For sure, by that time, people looked at him like an outlaw. He was someone who talked about something, he did something which was completely out of that time, which made him very, very famous. And he created something which lasted for centuries and will last for centuries. You see, it's how you influence people with a modern thinking and with a kind of, I would so call it, embedding the people in your thoughts and ideas and let them be part of it. Everyone is proud to come here to the Bocuse d'Or, to Lyon, to be here in Sirha, because it's something special, created by an idea which was ahead of its time. And this is exactly what we are trying to create in different levels, in education, in how to support people, World Chef Without Borders, a kind of flying doctors for chefs, which is really something different. And you see the response which you have in the media platforms, it's really huge, it's fantastic, and people really like to see that kind of activity, especially nowadays, because the social, I would so call it, gathering together, binding people together is one of the successes of us human beings.
Thomas, thank you very much. And Thomas Gugler, the president of Worldchefs, thank you very much. Ragnar Fridriksson, managing director of Worldchefs, thank you very much. And I think we can probably agree that it's essentially about every chef leaving a legacy in education about sustainable development. Well, next coming up, we have a little bit of cooking in the demonstration area. In fact, I'm not sure if it's cooking, but I know that Michelle's involved, and also pastry chef Brandon de Haan.